You know something I've realized? There's two ways to look at safety. Really, I describe it as in there's two buckets, right? In one bucket, you have one perspective, and in the other bucket, you got another perspective. Today, we're going to talk about the two different ways to look at safety and how you can get the right perspective when it comes to keeping your people safe. Let's jump into it. If you haven't already checked it out, take a look at my OSHA audit course. I just revamped it, I updated it. Now it comes in two different sections. The first section is all about how to prepare your team, your company, for an unexpected audit. And I can tell you, when I was a safety manager, this is something I wanted to know how to do. I wanted to know, how do I prepare my team? Not just me, it's not all on David, and it's not all on you. We need to make sure our team understands what to do during an audit. The second part of the OSHA audit course is all about how you respond to OSHA after an audit happens. And this really unpacks the whole framework of an OSHA audit. So check it out. It's on my website, helpwithosha.com. The OSHA audit course. Every safety manager should understand what it takes to go through an OSHA audit. If you've never been through one, this course will show you how to do it. Now, let's talk about the two different perspectives that people have when it comes to safety. So I mentioned earlier, it's like two different buckets. Well, the first bucket is OSHA compliance. And this is the bucket that talks about what do we have to do to be in compliance with the law? What do we have to do to be in compliance with the law? So we're talking about every safety program you have. Let's start with lockout, tagout, for example. When it comes to lockout, tagout, you have to have a written program. You have to have machine-specific procedures. You have to have training for both people that are authorized to perform lockout as well as people that are affected by lockout. That should be included in an orientation. We got to have locks and tags that are available to employees. So you can see that these are all things we have to do to be in compliance. We need to do periodic inspections to make sure that the program is working and that the training is actually taking place. These are all compliance issues. Now, they're important and they're required, and the reason they're required is because they're important. But what I've discovered is sometimes companies just say, well, what's the bare minimum we have to do? And that's not the right way to approach it. And I think you know that, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. But it's important to understand, if you have an LMS system, a learning management system that is providing safety training for you and your team, if they're like 3-minute videos or 6-minute videos and people are watching them on their phone and they're just clicking a box and it's showing that they've watched it and that's counted as your training, well, that might meet the letter of the law, right? We're providing training to our employees, but the spirit of it is that they actually understand why it's important to be done. Not just what to do, but why we do it. So there's the spirit of the compliance, right? Why does OSHA require it? Because they know people need to know about lockout, tagout. But then there's the letter of the law, and that's like, we have to watch this video, we have to check this box, we have to sign this roster, we have to turn in this quiz, whatever it is. There's two different things there. We want to make sure that our employees understand why we do what we do. And sometimes when we're talking about compliance, we get lost in the weeds of checking the boxes. And I'll be completely honest, it's probably not you. You're watching this video because you want to get better, because you want to learn more, because you want to grow as a safety manager. And I'm just telling you, it's probably not you. But you have to be careful that you're not just doing what's required for compliance, because that's not actually giving your employees what they need, right? So one bucket, OSHA compliance. This is what we have to do. We have to have the documented training. We got to have the sign-offs. And that's oftentimes what a learning management system or your workers' comp training or things that it gives you what is required, but it is making it so generic that it's not necessarily applicable to your company. It's not really a good fit for your company. So what's the other bucket? Well, the other bucket on this side is what I call the Forrest Gump bucket. Now, Forrest Gump, my favorite movie of all time. And I love Forrest Gump. And when I think of Forrest Gump, I think of all the famous characters. You think of Lieutenant Dan, you think of Jenny, you think of all these different characters. One of the most iconic characters from that movie was Bubba. And Bubba was a dedicated shrimper, right? He loved shrimp. We know the story about shrimp. He can tell you everything and how you're going to make shrimp. But one key scene from that movie that is like burned in my brain is when Bubba is in Forrest's arms and he's dying, and he says the last thing that he's going to say, and he says, "Forrest, I want to go home." Well, this is the other perspective for safety. And I try not to get too serious and too fatalistic and too just over the top serious. But we want every single employee that we work with to go home. We want them to go home. We want them to go home with 10 fingers, with 10 toes. We want them to go home better than they were when they came in. Maybe a little bit more tired, but hopefully with some money in their pocket. We want them to go home. And the truth is, the real truth is, nobody comes to work expecting to get seriously hurt on the job. And when you've seen somebody that has a life-altering injury and you know it could have been prevented, it's just heart-wrenching. And I don't want that for anybody watching this video. I don't want that for you. I've been there. It's a terrible feeling. So it's important that you're not just checking the boxes with compliance, but that you are creating a safety program that really explains why we need to do what we do. You see, we want people to understand it's important to wear a forklift seatbelt, not because David or you are going to fuss at them and write them up and get them in trouble. That only goes so far. We want them to wear the forklift seatbelt because they realize that if that forklift tips over, they're going to get crushed and they're not going to go home. And we want them to go home. So, like I said a minute ago, the conflict here, the problem, the challenge is that people don't think it's going to happen to them. So we have to tell them it will happen to you. It will happen here if we don't follow the right safety rules. Not because we're trying to check a box, not because we're trying to meet compliance, not because it's required, but we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. You want your employees, you want your coworkers, you want your managers to do the safe thing automatically. So how do you get them to do the safe thing automatically? You train them in a way so that they connect the why it's important with what they're doing, and then you make it easy to do the right thing. If you make it easier to do the right thing and the safe thing than to do the shortcut and the cheating thing, they're not going to get hurt. You see, in reality, when I go and do a safety accident investigation after somebody's been hurt, it's like it's what I hate most about this job, because I go in and I do an accident investigation to find out what happened, and I'm just bombarded with the fact that this was preventable. It was preventable. Somewhere along the line, this employee thought, I don't have to do it this way, I'll do it my way. And then they got hurt. And now they look back at it and they're like, oof, man, I wish I'd done it the safe way. So I want to tie a bow on this video. I want to tie a bow on this episode by clearly saying you got compliance and you've got go home, right? Compliance is what we have to do. It means nothing unless we connect it to why people need to do it. It's very important that we explain why we need to do things. So put more in the bucket over here so your employees understand why we do it. And then this compliance part, that's what you got to worry about. That's what I got to worry about as a consultant, as a safety coach. I got to make sure people understand, hey, we got to do it according to the compliance regulations. That's required, but that's a low bar. We want to make sure that we are actually setting our people up for success so that they don't get hurt on the job and so that they go home safe. So hopefully that gave you a little insight. You know, you got two, almost think of them like pairs of goggles. You got one pair of goggles where you're looking for compliance and you're saying, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. And sometimes that's your boss talking to you. But then other times you've got the kind of goggles on that say, what could hurt somebody? How do I communicate to them the right way to do this? How do I give them the right training, the right tools, the right PPE, the right safety inspections so that we're looking for the right items? Those are all things that the best safety managers do. I'll end on this note. One of the toughest things about being a safety manager is if you do your job, nothing happens. If you do your job and no one gets hurt, then people just go, well, no one got hurt. It's just the way it is. They don't always see what could have happened. And in a coming video, I'm gonna talk about that and just kind of explain the importance behind. We need to make sure that people just get in the habit of doing the right things so that they don't cut the corners and get injured. Now, having said that, if you haven't done so, sign up for my free OSHA audit checklist. That's a great way to kind of have a checklist for what's required during an OSHA audit. And if you haven't done so already, check out the OSHA audit course that we've put together. It is really, really good. I'm very proud of it. I think it's going to help a lot of people, and I hope it'll help you. So until we talk again, do everything you can to keep the people you work with safe, because no one should get hurt at work.